In the bustling corridors of UCSF Medical Center, where hope and despair dance their eternal waltz, Dr. Kim moved with the precision of a master surgeon and the compassion of a healer who understood that behind every case file was a beating heart, a family's dreams, and someone's entire world hanging in the balance. Known throughout the hospital as Dr. Miracle for his lightning-fast hands and uncanny ability to pull patients back from the brink of death, he had seen it all, or so he thought. On this particular August morning in 2000, Dr. Kim was reviewing the case of Gloria Ramos, a 60-year-old first-grade teacher whose warm smile couldn't hide the yellow tinge creeping across her skin. Her medical chart told a story that was becoming all too familiar. Hepatitis C contracted through a blood transfusion 18 years earlier, lying dormant like a sleeping dragon until it awakened to wreak havoc on her liver. By the time Gloria noticed her bloated stomach and sought medical help in 1997, the dragon had already burned through most of her liver function. Dr. Kim, called out Nurse Sarah, approaching with that particular urgency that experienced medical professionals recognize instantly. The Ramos family is here for consultation. Mrs. Ramos' condition is deteriorating faster than we anticipated. Dr. Kim set down the chart and felt that familiar tightening in his chest, the weight of responsibility that came with holding someone's life in your hands. As he walked toward the consultation room, Dr. Kim reflected on what made cases like Gloria's so challenging. It wasn't just the medical complexity of advanced cirrhosis or the technical demands of liver transplantation. It was the human element. Watching a vibrant woman who had dedicated her life to nurturing young minds slowly fade away while her family stood helplessly by, clinging to hope that seemed to diminish with each passing day. When Dr. Kim opened the door to meet the Ramos family, he was struck by the determination in their eyes. Gloria sat surrounded by her husband Ruben and daughters Veronica and Letitia, all of them radiating the kind of fierce love that can move mountains, or in this case, inspire miracles. This wasn't just another medical case. This was a family refusing to give up, and Dr. Kim knew he was about to embark on a journey that would test not only his surgical skills, but also his belief in the power of human connection to heal. Sometimes, he would later tell his residents, the most powerful medicine we can prescribe is hope backed by unwavering determination. Little did he know that the Ramos family would teach him as much about healing as he would teach them about survival. If stories like this touch your heart, and you want to hear more about medical miracles that show us the incredible power of family love, please subscribe and join our community of believers in the impossible. Dr. Kim had learned early in his career that the most devastating diagnoses often arrived disguised as minor complaints. When Gloria Ramos first visited her family doctor in the summer of 1997, she was embarrassed about what seemed like vanity. Her stomach had become noticeably bloated, and she worried about how she looked in her favorite teaching dresses. "I just thought I was gaining weight in a weird way," Gloria would later tell Dr. Kim during their first consultation. "I kept buying looser clothes and trying different exercises, but nothing worked." What Gloria didn't realize was that her liver, damaged by the hepatitis C virus she had unknowingly carried for 15 years, was failing to process fluids properly. The bloating was ascites, fluid accumulation that signaled advanced liver disease. The journey to diagnosis had been a maze of specialists and tests. Gloria's primary care physician had initially suspected digestive issues, prescribing dietary changes and gentle medications. When the bloating persisted and was joined by fatigue so profound that Gloria could barely make it through a school day, more serious testing began. The blood work revealed elevated liver enzymes, and suddenly, Gloria's world shifted from concern about appearance to fear for her life. Dr. Joanna Reddy, the gastroenterologist who ultimately diagnosed Gloria's condition, delivered the news with the clinical precision that medical training demands, but couldn't hide her genuine concern. "Mrs. Ramos," she had said, "your liver has sustained significant damage. We need to discuss treatment options immediately." The 3 months of intensive treatment that followed, a combination of interferon and ribavirin that left Gloria nauseated and weak, proved futile against the advanced cirrhosis. When Dr. Kim first reviewed Gloria's case, he saw beyond the medical terminology to the human story unfolding. Here was a woman who had spent 3 decades shaping young minds, who had given her students not just education but also warmth and encouragement. Now she was facing her own lesson in vulnerability, learning that sometimes life's most important tests can't be studied for or prepared against. "The liver is remarkable," Dr. Kim explained to his surgical team as they prepared for the complex case ahead. It's the only organ that can regenerate itself, but when cirrhosis takes hold, that regenerative power becomes compromised. Mrs. Ramos needs more than medical intervention. She needs a miracle. What Dr. Kim didn't yet know was that the Ramos family was already preparing to create their own miracle. The transition from a routine medical complaint to a life-threatening diagnosis had happened with frightening speed, but it had also revealed something beautiful about the Ramos family: their capacity to transform fear into action, despair into determination. But as Gloria's condition worsened and traditional treatments failed, the family would soon discover that sometimes the greatest miracles require the greatest sacrifices, and love would demand more than any of them had ever imagined. While Dr. Kim was coordinating with the transplant team to get Gloria on the waiting list for a deceased donor liver, 28-year-old Letitia was conducting her own medical education. As Gloria's younger daughter, she possessed the same fierce determination that had made her mother such an effective teacher. But now she channeled that energy into understanding every aspect of liver disease and transplantation. "Mom, look at this," Letitia announced one evening, her laptop screen glowing in the dim hospital room where Gloria was receiving another round of supportive treatment. "There's something called living donor liver transplantation. A healthy person can donate part of their liver, and both the donor's liver and the recipient's liver will grow back to full size." Gloria looked at her daughter with a mixture of amazement and concern, while Veronica, the older sister, leaned in to read over Letitia's shoulder. Dr. Kim had witnessed many family dynamics during his years in transplant medicine, but the Ramos sisters impressed him with their methodical approach to research and their unwavering support for their mother. When they brought their findings to him during Gloria's next appointment, he could see the hope flickering in Gloria's eyes for the first time since her diagnosis. "Living donor transplantation is indeed an option," Dr. Kim confirmed, his measured tone reflecting both the promise and the gravity of what they were discussing. "The procedure involves removing approximately 60% of a healthy liver from a donor. The remaining 40% in the donor regenerates to full size within 2 to 3 months. The donated portion, once transplanted, also grows to meet the recipient's needs." The medical explanation was complex, but Dr. Kim had learned to translate complicated procedures into human terms. "Think of the liver as having an extraordinary healing power," he told the family. "When part of it is removed, the remaining cells don't just multiply, they actually reorganize and grow back the missing sections. It's one of the most remarkable capabilities in the human body." Veronica, who had been quietly absorbing every word, finally spoke up. "What would a potential donor need to qualify?" The question hung in the air like a bridge between hope and reality. Dr. Kim outlined the requirements: compatible blood type, excellent health, appropriate age, and most importantly, full understanding of the risks involved. "The donor surgery is actually more complex than the recipient's surgery," Dr. Kim explained honestly. "We're removing healthy tissue from a healthy person, which goes against our fundamental principle of first, do no harm. That's why the evaluation process is so thorough. We need to ensure that the donor is making an informed decision and that their remaining liver will function perfectly." As Dr. Kim watched the family process this information, he saw something that still gave him chills years later. Without hesitation, both daughters looked at each other and nodded. They didn't need to discuss it or think it over. Their mother needed a liver, and they were going to find out which one of them could provide it. This wasn't just medical decision-making. It was love in its purest, most sacrificial form. The conversation that evening marked a turning point not just for Gloria's treatment, but for the entire family's understanding of what they were willing to do for each other. The path from research to reality would prove more challenging than any textbook could prepare them for. But the Ramos family was about to discover that their greatest strength lay not in what they knew, but in what they were willing to risk for love. Dr. Kim had overseen hundreds of donor evaluations, but watching Veronica and Letitia undergo testing to determine who could save their mother's life was unlike anything he had experienced. The process wasn't just medical, it was profoundly emotional, as each test result brought them closer to or further from the possibility of giving Gloria a second chance at life. "Blood type compatibility is our first hurdle," Dr. Kim explained as both sisters sat in the laboratory, rolling up their sleeves for what would be the first of many blood draws. The phlebotomist worked efficiently while the family held their breath, knowing that this simple test could determine everything. When the results came back 3 days later, The news was both wonderful and complicated. Veronica matched her mother's type A blood perfectly, while Letitia's type O blood, though universal for recipients, wasn't the optimal match for Gloria's specific situation. Veronica's relief was mixed with the dawning realization of what lay ahead. "Does this mean I'm definitely the donor?" she asked Dr. Kim during their consultation. He appreciated her directness. It showed she understood the gravity of what they were discussing. "It means you're a candidate," he replied carefully. "But we have many more tests to complete before we can make that determination." The evaluation process that followed was exhaustive. Dr. Kim's team conducted cardiac stress tests to ensure Veronica's heart could withstand major surgery. Pulmonary function tests confirmed her lungs were healthy enough for the lengthy procedure and recovery. Comprehensive liver function tests, including detailed imaging studies, verified that her liver was not only healthy, but had the ideal anatomy for donation. What struck Dr. Kim most during this process was how the entire Ramos family approached each appointment as a team. "It was a family event for every appointment," Veronica would later recall. "Everybody took off work. Everybody went together. We weren't messing around." This level of family support was crucial, Dr. Kim knew, because the psychological evaluation was just as important as the physical tests. The psychiatric assessment required Veronica to demonstrate her understanding of the risks, her motivation for donation, and her ability to make this decision free from coercion. Dr. Kim watched as the psychiatrist carefully explored Veronica's feelings about potentially saving her mother's life while risking her own health. "I need to know that you're doing this for the right reasons," the psychiatrist explained, "and that you fully comprehend that donation surgery carries real risks, including the possibility of complications or even death." Veronica's response revealed the depth of her commitment. "I understand the risks, but I also understand what happens if I don't try. My mother dies. That's not acceptable when I have the power to prevent it." Dr. Kim had heard many donors express their motivations, but few with such clarity and resolve. The final hurdle was the most complex. Detailed imaging studies to map Veronica's liver anatomy and ensure that the portion they would remove could successfully sustain Gloria while leaving enough healthy tissue for Veronica's own survival. The radiologist spent hours reviewing CT scans and MRIs, measuring blood vessels and bile ducts with millimeter precision. When all the results were compiled, Dr. Kim called the family into his office for what he knew would be one of the most important conversations of their lives. As the test results painted a picture of possibility, the Ramos family was about to face the most difficult decision any family could imagine: whether love was worth risking everything they held dear. In Dr. Kim's office, surrounded by medical textbooks and awards that spoke to his expertise, the Ramos family gathered for what they all knew would be a life-altering conversation. Gloria sat between her husband Ruben and daughter Letitia, while Veronica faced Dr. Kim across his desk. The test results spread before them told a story of compatibility and possibility, but Dr. Kim's expression carried the weight of the decision they were about to make. "Veronica, all your tests indicate that you're an excellent candidate for liver donation," Dr. Kim began, his voice carrying both professional confidence and personal concern. "Your liver anatomy is ideal for the procedure, your health status is perfect, and the psychological evaluation confirms you understand the implications. However, I need to be completely transparent about what this means for both you and your mother." Dr. Kim had learned that families making such profound decisions needed absolute honesty. He explained that Veronica would undergo a surgery lasting between 6 to 8 hours, during which surgeons would remove approximately 60% of her liver through a large incision across her abdomen. The recovery would be painful and lengthy, at least 2 weeks in the hospital and several months before returning to normal activities. "And the risks?" asked Ruben, Gloria's husband, his voice barely above a whisper. Dr. Kim appreciated the direct question because it forced him to address what every family member was thinking but afraid to ask. For living liver donors, there's approximately a 1 in 200 chance of life-threatening complications and about a 1 in 500 chance of death. These are small percentages, but we're talking about real risks to a healthy person. Gloria, who had been unusually quiet throughout the consultation, finally spoke. "Mija," she said to Veronica, using the Spanish endearment that had punctuated their relationship since childhood, "I can't ask you to do this. The risk is too great." Dr. Kim watched as tears formed in Gloria's eyes, not from fear for herself, but from the impossibility of accepting such a sacrifice from her daughter. Veronica's response would stay with Dr. Kim for years afterward. "Mom, you didn't ask me to do this. I'm choosing to do this. You spent your whole life taking care of Letitia and me, making sure we had everything we needed to succeed. Now it's my turn to take care of you." The simple eloquence of her words filled the room with a silence that spoke volumes about the depth of their bond. Dr. Kim had facilitated countless family discussions about transplantation, but this moment reminded him why he had chosen this specialty. Beyond the technical complexity of the surgery, beyond the medical protocols and risk assessments, transplantation was fundamentally about love made manifest, about one person literally giving a piece of themselves so another could live. "There's something else you need to consider," Dr. Kim continued gently. "If anything goes wrong with the transplant, if Gloria's body rejects the new liver, or if complications develop, Veronica, you must understand that it wouldn't be your fault. The donated organ is a gift, regardless of the outcome. Many donors struggle with guilt if the transplant doesn't succeed, and I need you to be prepared for that possibility." The family spent another hour discussing logistics, asking questions, and processing the enormity of what they were considering. Finally, Veronica looked directly at Dr. Kim and said, "When can we schedule the surgery?" Her determination was absolute, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was committing to do. Dr. Kim smiled, not with relief, but with admiration for the courage he was witnessing. "Let me coordinate with the surgical team. We'll need about 2 weeks to finalize all the preparations." As the October surgery date approached, both Dr. Kim and the Ramos family would discover that the greatest challenges weren't always medical. Sometimes they were found in the quiet moments when courage had to overcome the whispered doubts of the heart. October 10th, 2000, was a night that would forever be etched in Dr. Kim's memory. As he made his final rounds before the most complex surgery of his career, he found himself stopping by the rooms of both Gloria and Veronica. In all his years as a surgeon, he had never simultaneously prepared 2 patients from the same family, one to give life, the other to receive it. Gloria's room was filled with quiet activity. Veronica sat beside her mother's bed, holding her hand while they talked in the soft, intimate tones that only mothers and daughters share. Letitia was reading aloud from a collection of letters Gloria's first-grade students had sent, their crayon drawings and misspelled words of encouragement covering every surface of the room. Reuben stood by the window, looking out at the city lights, his shoulders carrying the weight of tomorrow's uncertainty. "Dr. Kim," Gloria called softly when she noticed him in the doorway. "Come in, please. We were just talking about how grateful we are for everything you and your team have done." Dr. Kim approached the bed, struck by the serenity on Gloria's face. After months of deteriorating health, she looked peaceful. Not because her physical condition had improved, but because hope had returned. "Tomorrow is going to be a long day for all of us," Dr. Kim said gently. "How are you feeling?" It was a question he asked all his patients before major surgery, but with Gloria, it carried additional weight. She wasn't just facing transplant surgery. She was watching her daughter prepare to risk her life for hers. "I'm scared," Gloria admitted with the honesty that Dr. Kim had come to appreciate about the Ramos family. "Not for the surgery. I trust you completely. I'm scared that something might happen to Veronica because of me." What kind of mother asks her child to do something this dangerous? Veronica squeezed her mother's hand. "The kind of mother who raised daughters who would do anything to save her," she replied firmly. Dr. Kim watched this exchange with the recognition that he was witnessing something profound, a family demonstrating that love isn't just an emotion, but an action, a choice, a commitment that transcends fear. Moving to Veronica's room an hour later, Dr. Kim found a different, but equally moving scene. Veronica was writing in a journal, documenting her thoughts before surgery. "I want to remember how this feels," she explained to Dr. Kim. "The decision to do this, the certainty I feel about it, the love that's bigger than the fear. If something happens to me tomorrow, I want there to be a record of why I chose this." Dr. Kim sat down beside her bed. Throughout his career, he had developed the ability to maintain professional distance while still connecting with his patients. But Veronica's courage was breaking down those carefully constructed barriers. "Tell me what you're thinking about most," he said. "I keep imagining Mom going back to her classroom," Veronica replied, her eyes bright with anticipation. "I picture her with new students, reading to them, helping them learn to write their names. She has so much more to give, Dr. Kim. If my liver can help her do that, then this surgery isn't a sacrifice. It's an investment in all the lives she'll touch." The wisdom in her words struck Dr. Kim deeply. In his focus on the technical aspects of the surgery, the precise cuts, the vascular connections, the immunosuppression protocols, he sometimes lost sight of the larger picture. Veronica was reminding him that they weren't just transplanting an organ. They were transplanting possibilities, dreams, future moments of joy and connection. As Dr. Kim completed his preparations and reviewed the surgical plan one final time, he reflected on what tomorrow would bring. 2 operating rooms running simultaneously, with him moving between them to coordinate the harvest and transplantation. Nancy Asher, his colleague and one of the finest surgeons he knew, would be performing the donor procedure while he focused on Gloria's transplant. The technical challenges were significant, but Dr. Kim felt confident in his team's abilities. What moved him most was the privilege of facilitating this extraordinary act of love between mother and daughter. As dawn broke over the hospital on October 11th, the Ramos family was about to discover that miracles aren't just gifts that happen to us. Sometimes they're choices we make for each other, one courageous decision at a time. October 11th, 2000, began before sunrise in the preoperative suites of UCSF Medical Center. Dr. Kim arrived at 5 a.m., his usual practice before complex surgeries, to center himself and review every detail one final time. Today was different. Today he would be orchestrating a dance between 2 operating rooms, 2 lives, and one family's extraordinary act of love. At 6 a.m., both Gloria and Veronica were wheeled into adjacent operating rooms. Dr. Kim had specifically requested this arrangement so he could move between the procedures, ensuring perfect coordination. Nancy Asher would perform the donor hepatectomy on Veronica while he prepared Gloria to receive her daughter's gift. The timing had to be flawless. Veronica's liver tissue could only survive outside the body for a limited time. In operating room 1, Dr. Kim watched as the anesthesiology team carefully monitored Gloria's vital signs. Her liver disease had made her more vulnerable to anesthesia complications, requiring extra vigilance. Her blood pressure is stable, reported the anesthesiologist. We're ready when you are. Dr. Kim nodded, knowing that in the room next door, Nancy Asher was beginning the delicate process of exposing Veronica's healthy liver. The donor surgery was the more technically challenging of the 2 procedures. Nancy Asher had to remove exactly 60% of Veronica's liver, enough to provide Gloria with adequate function, but not so much that Veronica's remaining liver couldn't sustain her own life. Using ultrasound guidance and meticulous dissection, she carefully separated the liver segments, ensuring that all blood vessels and bile ducts remained intact. Dr. Kim moved between the rooms every 30 minutes, coordinating the procedures. "How's our donor doing?" he asked Nancy Asher during one of his visits. "Beautifully," she replied, her hands never stopping their precise movements. "The anatomy is perfect. Veronica's going to do wonderfully." The confidence in her voice was reassuring, but Dr. Kim knew they were still hours away from knowing the full outcome. Meanwhile, in the waiting room, Ruben and Letitia sat in the uncomfortable silence that families know well during long surgeries. Hospital volunteers brought coffee and updates every hour. "Both procedures are progressing well. No complications so far." These brief reports were lifelines, small reassurances in an ocean of anxiety. By noon, Nancy Asher had successfully removed the designated portion of Veronica's liver. The tissue was immediately transported to Dr. Kim's operating room, where he had spent the past 6 hours preparing Gloria's abdomen and removing her diseased liver. The moment when he held Veronica's healthy liver tissue in his hands was profound. This wasn't just an organ, but a tangible manifestation of a daughter's love for her mother. "Clamp off," Dr. Kim announced as he began the intricate process of connecting Veronica's liver to Gloria's blood vessels. Every suture had to be perfect, every connection precise. The hepatic artery, portal vein, and bile duct all required separate attachments, and each one carried the weight of Gloria's future. The operating room fell into the concentrated silence that accompanies the most delicate phases of surgery. At 2:17 p.m., Dr. Kim removed the final clamps and watched as blood began flowing through Veronica's liver tissue, now residing in Gloria's body. The organ immediately began changing color, transforming from the pale hue of ischemic tissue to the healthy pink that indicated successful circulation. "We have perfusion," he announced to the surgical team, and a collective sigh of relief filled the room. But the most remarkable moment came 30 minutes later when the new liver began producing bile. the clearest indication that it was functioning normally. Dr. Kim watched the golden fluid collect in the drainage tube and felt the satisfaction that came only with successful transplantation. Veronica's gift was working, and Gloria's body was accepting it. Both surgeries concluded successfully by 4 p.m. As Dr. Kim removed his surgical gloves and stepped out of the operating room, he was met by Ruben and Letitia, whose faces reflected the emotional exhaustion of 8 hours of waiting. Both procedures went perfectly, he told them, watching as tears of relief replaced tears of worry. As both women were wheeled into recovery, the Ramos family was about to discover that the end of surgery was just the beginning of their journey, one that would test not just their body's ability to heal, but their heart's capacity to grow even stronger through shared triumph. In the days following surgery, Dr. Kim witnessed something that reminded him why he had chosen transplant medicine. Recovery Room 3A and 3B housed both Gloria and Veronica, and the parallel healing of mother and daughter became a testament to the resilience of both the human body and the human spirit. Gloria's recovery exceeded all expectations. "Oh my gosh, it was amazing how alert and how different things were for me almost as soon as I woke up after the surgery," she would later tell Dr. Kim. The yellow tinge that had marked her skin for months began fading within days, and her appetite returned with surprising vigor. Most remarkably, the mental clarity that had been clouded by her failing liver's inability to process toxins returned completely. Veronica's recovery proved more challenging. During post-operative care, the medical team discovered she was allergic to morphine and several other standard pain medications. Without the benefit of strong analgesics, she had to endure the considerable pain of major abdominal surgery with only mild pain relievers. Dr. Kim watched her face this setback with the same determination that had carried her through the decision to donate, never complaining or expressing regret about her choice. "Pain is temporary," Veronica told Dr. Kim during one of his daily visits. "But what we accomplished here is permanent. Mom is going to live because of what happened in that operating room. A few weeks of discomfort is nothing compared to that." Her perspective humbled Dr. Kim, reminding him that patients often taught him as much about healing as medical school ever had. The true test came 2 weeks after surgery when Gloria developed an infection. For transplant recipients taking immune-suppressing medications, infections represent serious threats. Dr. Kim immediately readmitted Gloria to the hospital, where she spent several anxious days under close monitoring while antibiotics fought the infection. Veronica, still recovering from her own surgery, insisted on staying with her mother despite her own need for rest. "This is exactly what Dr. Kim warned us about," Veronica reminded her family during the difficult week when Gloria's recovery hit this complication. "He said there would be challenges, that transplantation wasn't a simple cure but a lifelong journey. We knew this might happen, and were prepared to face it together." Her calm leadership during this crisis impressed not just Dr. Kim, but the entire medical team caring for Gloria. The infection cleared completely, and both women returned home within 3 weeks of surgery. But for Dr. Kim, the most meaningful moment came during a follow-up appointment 6 weeks later. Gloria had gained 20 pounds, her skin had returned to its healthy color, and she was making plans to return to teaching. Veronica had healed beautifully, with her remaining liver showing perfect regeneration on imaging studies. "Dr. Kim," Gloria said during that appointment, "I need you to know that this experience has changed our entire family. We've learned that love isn't just something you feel. It's something you do, sometimes at great personal cost." Veronica didn't just give me her liver. She gave me the chance to watch my future grandchildren grow up, to continue teaching children, to have more years with Ruben. Veronica nodded in agreement. "And I learned that the greatest gift you can give someone isn't something you buy or something you say. Sometimes it's literally a piece of yourself." I would make the same decision again without hesitation. Dr. Kim realized he was witnessing the transformation that occurs when a medical procedure becomes something deeper, when healing extends beyond physical recovery to encompass emotional and spiritual growth. The Ramos family had become living proof that miracles aren't supernatural events, but rather the extraordinary things ordinary people choose to do for love. As both women returned to their normal lives, their story was just beginning to ripple outward, touching other families facing similar decisions and proving that one act of courage can inspire countless others to choose hope over fear. 3 years after that transformative October day, Dr. Kim received a letter that would forever change how he viewed his role as a surgeon. It was from one of Gloria's first-grade students, now in 4th grade, thanking Mrs. Ramos's doctor for helping their favorite teacher come back to them. The child's crayon drawing showed Gloria reading to her class, surrounded by hearts and smiling faces. Today, both Gloria and Veronica continue to thrive. Gloria returned to teaching and worked several more years before retiring to become a substitute teacher and tutor, unable to completely step away from the classroom that had been her life's passion. Veronica advanced in her career in educational administration, channeling the same dedication that drove her to save her mother's life into helping struggling students succeed. Perhaps most remarkably, the entire Ramos family transformed their experience into a mission of hope for others. They volunteer with transplant organizations, sharing their story at high schools to encourage organ donation registration and supporting families facing similar decisions. Organ donation has become kind of my hobby now, Veronica says with a smile that carries both joy and purpose. For Dr. Kim, the Ramos case became a defining moment in his understanding of what it means to heal. I realized that day that we don't just transplant organs, he reflects. We transplant possibilities, relationships, futures, and dreams. Every successful transplant creates ripples that extend far beyond the operating room. The technical success of Gloria and Veronica's surgery was significant, but its human impact was immeasurable. Their story proves that families facing impossible medical situations aren't powerless. Sometimes the greatest healing comes not from what doctors can do, but from what love empowers us to do for each other. As you face your own health challenges or support loved ones through theirs, remember that miracles aren't just things that happen to us. Sometimes they're choices we make, risks we take, and love we demonstrate through action rather than words. The Ramos family didn't just survive their medical crisis. They transformed it into a beacon of hope that continues to light the way for others walking similar paths. Their story reminds us that healing is always possible, love is always stronger than fear, and sometimes the greatest gifts we can give are pieces of ourselves shared with open hearts and unwavering courage.